what the target is? A human? No, I heard what you said. What? There's no way in the galaxy anyone could be that monumentally stupid. I was led to believe that the Black Hand assassins could kill anything. You keep that name out of your thrice-damned mouth around here. Well, we had to abandon that name after the bad deal with the Delan Empire years ago. I don't care about any empire. I want you to kill a human. The assassin's mandibles clicked angrily in agitation. We don't take contracts to kill humans. Then I'll just contract someone else. You can try, but none of the other guilds in the galaxy will take that job. And even if you found an independent with a death wish, they won't get the job done, not without either dying or ratting you out. You can't really believe that humans are unkillable. I never said they were unkillable. Quite the contrary. I personally know that they are definitely mortal, but we don't take on contracts to kill them. Why? And all the hells, not because the only way to kill a human and live long enough to enjoy the money for the job is to drop a neutron bomb on them from orbit, just to be safe. Then you grab the fastest ship you can and book it before the rest of the humans find out what you did. After that, I suggest finding a way to another galaxy and staying there for the rest of your miserable life. You're having me on. Tell me, does the planet you come from have compulsory education? What does that have to do with anything? Indulge me. Yes, 10 years of basically teaching our young how to be as obedient as a Raysian drone sounds about right for any government. Engaging in public education allows one to learn various historical lessons, although there are some topics that may not be covered, such as galactic history. Allow me to elaborate on this. No assassin of repute would accept a contract to eliminate a human. As the drinks were served, the seasoned assassin took a deep sip of his beverage before addressing his new companion. Do you recall my reference to the Delpin Empire? Yes, what of it? Are you aware of their fate? Their empire collapsed after they expended excessive resources attempting to conquer a death world, which is, in fact, the cradle world of humanity. It was not the death world that defeated the Delpin, rather, it was the humans themselves. The assassin took another long sip of his beer. The Delpin Empire once dominated this half of the galaxy, with hundreds of species and civilizations either subjugated or obliterated. Serve or perish, that was the Delpin doctrine. The council that governed the regions outside Delpin territory at that time was largely powerless to halt the relentless war machine that fueled Delpin expansion. They would engage in posturing, debate, and even pleas, but their efforts were futile against the unstoppable advance of the Delpin. System by system, the galaxy succumbed to the Emperor's rule. Eventually, they encountered a system known as Sol, a name that its inhabitants had uniquely claimed, and thus the Delpin allowed them to retain it. The humans inhabited the third planet within this system, unfortunate souls that they were, having only just begun to explore their home system when the Delpin arrived. The humans were fragmented into various socio-economic groups referred to as countries, which facilitated the Delphin's conquest, as the divided nations of humanity were slow to respond. Responding to the situation, the legions advanced across the land, unaware of their impending doom due to communication jammers. Despite these challenges, the humans put up a formidable resistance. It took the Delpan one galactic standard month to establish control over the planet. Most pre-FTL worlds succumbed within a week. However, the humans fought fiercely, particularly when the remaining nations realized they were under attack. They even succeeded in halting the Delpin ground forces temporarily before reinforcements arrived, leading to the fall of the last bastion of resistance. Following this, the usual administrative monotony ensued, as the new overlords divided the enslaved population into work groups and assigned them tasks that would ultimately serve their interests. Many of the surviving humans were farmers and ranchers, so the Delpan allowed them to continue in their areas of expertise, adhering to the old human adage that an army marches on its stomach, and indeed, the Delpan war machine was quite hungry. Several 100,000 were transported off-world to labor in mines elsewhere, as these humans possessed unnatural strength and durability due to the high gravity of their home planet, making them well-suited for the perilous work of mining. The worlds and species subjugated by the Delpan typically experienced a series of predictable events, as if following a script. Initially, there would be a year or two during which the overlords and administrators would need to be quite severe with punishment until the slaves adapted to the new order. This would be followed by a few years of relative tranquility, which would then give way to a cycle of rebellions. Uprisings occurred 5 to 10 years following the initial conquest. Once these were suppressed, there was typically insufficient resistance remaining to attempt another uprising, leading the survivors to abandon hope. These humans did not adhere to expectations. They reluctantly complied a few months after the invasion concluded, and when the anticipated uprisings failed to materialize, I can only imagine the Delpan felt quite proud of themselves for extinguishing the spirit of the primates. If I were to offer a single compliment to the humans, it would be this: they are instinctive hunters, adept at waiting patiently for the opportune moment to strike. For 20 Earth years, the humans toiled, lived, and reproduced like cling rats. Not that the Delpan cared about the increasing human population, they would remark that it simply meant more fodder for the grinder. They even provided incentives such as additional rations and special privileges for human females who bore more than 4 offspring. If only the Delpan understood that the humans were not merely breeding more laborers, but rather cultivating an army. The human administrators and rulers who capitulated to the Delpan were at least partially fabricated puppets, intended to create the facade of surrender, while the genuine governments concealed themselves underground, literally in some instances, and continued to orchestrate their forces. They maintained hidden training camps, conducted nighttime schools, and secretly printed pamphlets advocating for the eventual overthrow of their oppressors. These humans were astute in concealing their activities from their overlords. Then, when the Delpan warfront was dozens of systems away in their quest to conquer the galaxy, it was time for the human leaders, long concealed in their secret hideouts, to execute the plans they had been formulating while scraps of pilfered Delpan technology were being diligently reverse-engineered by their scientists. They had been amassing resources for their rebellion since their surrender. While the Delpan were boasting, the humans were preparing, and now, finally ready, they made their move. It started small, all rebellions do: a rogue miner refusing to comply, a rancher informing his overlord that his entire herd had perished due to a fictitious disease. There was a factory explosion here, and soon larger disruptions to production followed. The human nation of France, with its long-standing history of opposing tyrants, would erupt in riots, shouting "Viva Revolution!" Do not inquire what that means. I never took the time to learn human languages. A crate of plasma rifles went missing, and then a grav tank failed to start. Upon inspecting the hood, they discovered it was entirely stripped of all power and anti-grav components. The Delpan leaders deemed these issues trivial, yet they required resolution, prompting them to enlist the Black Hand assassins and other guilds like ours to handle the troublemakers. Our services come at a considerable cost to the Empire, I assure you. The humans' planet, which I believe they refer to as dirt, has a gravity that is at least 3 times the galactic average. Every agent we dispatched had to be equipped with a grav assist suit and spent a week acclimating after arriving on the planet. Initially, our agents suspected that the human rebels were mere phantoms. They could observe the aftermath of sabotage but found no tangible evidence to identify the perpetrators. They would patrol the streets only to witness the sudden evacuation of the area before them. One might question the whereabouts of the humans. An explosion would shake the street, occasionally taking the agent along with it. One of our agents became so enraged by the loss of a friend that he traveled to a random, entirely unrelated town and began executing humans when they failed to provide answers regarding who was accountable. Unsurprisingly, a mob turned against him after the third execution and tore him apart. I cannot even fault the Delphin for refusing to pay the death fee in that instance. Our contract was to quell riots, not instigate them. The contract was deteriorating rapidly. While we were indeed eliminating humans as per our payment agreement, employing the surgical precision for which we were renowned, what value does money hold if one cannot even survive long enough to spend it? Before long, we found ourselves unable to traverse the surface of their planet without the heavy protection of Delphin troops. The humans would attack without warning and then vanish into the surroundings. On the African continent, an agent was lured onto the savannah while pursuing one of the human rebels, only to be ambushed by a pack of feline predators. Those humans had even managed to enlist the lesser beasts of their world to fight alongside them. The number of agents we lost to the humans' canine companions is difficult to quantify, and the less said about the perilous trap that the humans refer to as Australia, the better. Initially, one regional administration center fell silent, followed by another. By the time the Delphin nobles finally acknowledged this emerging issue, the entire planet had descended into silence, and not just the dirt, but every location where a human had been taken to work was exhibiting signs of this silence. Similar indicators of resistance suggest that they had been nurturing rebellious ideas alongside the other slave species of the Delpan. The gods alone know how they managed to communicate across the vastness of space. Before you interject, yes, the Delpan did possess patrol vessels roaming the region to suppress such occurrences, but those too had gone silent. The humans had infiltrated their ranks, either destroying or capturing these vessels, which were subsequently sent to their scientists for analysis. Now, without Delpan oversight, the humans discovered the secret factories and forces that had been developed over the years. Massive manufacturing plants producing components for space docks and, eventually, starships. These newly revealed launch facilities propelled these ships into orbit at a staggering rate of several thousand tons per day. By the time the light response vessels reached human space, they were no match for the modest fleet that the humans had constructed using stolen Delphin technology. It is not an exaggeration to assert that the Delphin were victims of their own arrogance. Each time they lost a response vessel or patrol fleet, they simply dispatched another. They were too preoccupied with expanding their territory to acknowledge the decay undermining their empire from within. When the Delpan finally grew weary of the expenses associated with sending light response fleets into the area, they withdrew a conquest fleet from the front lines. By that time, the human world and the next 3 conquered systems, in any direction, had fallen silent. Upon the arrival of the conquest fleet, 10 systems away from Sol, they encountered a fleet composed not only of humans, but also of all the other. After the humans' victory, the slave species in the region must have caused the Delphin Emperor to feel anxious. His fleets were positioned halfway across the galaxy, while the humans were situated between him and his armies. An emergency call was dispatched for all fleets to return immediately to the imperial capital, and any guilds, such as the Black Hand, were summoned for assistance. By that time, we had already lost nearly 2/3 of our guild, leading us to decline the call. This decision ultimately proved to be beneficial for us. The humans, after decades of covert operations, had become adept at infiltrating spies and saboteurs within their own ranks. 7 other assassin guilds were entirely eradicated. We recognize that it was a futile endeavor, regardless of the Empire's willingness to compensate. As the Delphin fleet assembled in their home system, plans were devised to systematically disperse and search the Empire for rebels. This strategy ultimately became the final blow. While the Delphin Empire was busy consolidating and strategizing, the humans rapidly advanced through the now unoccupied void, reaching out to every subjugated species within the Empire. They overthrew the Delphin administrators who controlled them and rallied them to their cause. Wherever the humans went, they ignited the flames of rebellion, causing the galaxy to ignite in turmoil. The ineffective council in the parts of the galaxy that had not yet fallen to the Empire eagerly allied with the humans in their struggle. Throughout the Empire, the oppressed and enslaved were casting off their shackles by the trillions, raising their fists in defiance. Forge worlds continued to produce ships, and agri-worlds persisted in cultivating crops and livestock, but for the new Galactic Alliance, not for the Delphin, cut off from the supply lines that sustained the Delphin Empire. Internal strife began to take root within the Imperial forces. Fleets of conquest launched from the Imperial capital, but never ventured more than a dozen systems before being ambushed by the Human Alliance. Much like on their homeworld, the humans struck with the speed of lightning and vanished into the void. Despite their efforts, the Delpan fleets were never able to effectively engage the humans in a fair confrontation. This situation persisted for months as the Delpan legions were gradually depleted. Ambushes, false distress signals, EMP mines concealed within clouds of debris, nothing was off limits for the humans, as long as it meant the enemy could be annihilated. When the Allied fleets finally breached Delpan Prime, they encountered a starving and fragmented fleet that was tearing itself apart. When the human admiral communicated with the disjointed flotilla and the Delpan captains beheld the immense scale of the armada before them, they surrendered immediately. With the rebellion now concluded after 3 years of conflict, the humans unleashed their most ruthless weapon, lawyers. They forcibly removed the Delpan emperor from his throne, along with all the Delpan nobles, administrators, and lash holders who had ever oppressed a sentient being. These individuals were then subjected to what is now recognized as our modern court system. It was far more civilized than the Delphin court, where the accused would be presented before the emperor or a representative, charges would be read, and the accused would be executed without any opportunity for defense. By the conclusion of the trials, the emperor had passed away due to old age, and his successor was tasked with rectifying the injustices inflicted upon the galaxy. The MEP Empire had been dismantled, leaving only a handful of systems belonging to the Delpan in the distant regions of the galactic southern arm. Many were apprehensive that the humans would retaliate and seize control of the galaxy for themselves. However, within a year following the Delpan's surrender, the humans had decommissioned more than half of their fleet and dispersed the remainder throughout the galaxy for the purposes of combating piracy and maintaining general peace. Our guild was exceptionally fortunate that the humans recognized our breach of contract. They allowed us to survive, on the condition that the Black Hand would be permanently disbanded. The humans reduced our numbers to merely a third before the rebellion even departed from their home planet. Once the leading assassin guild in the galaxy, we have now devolved into a loose collection of independent agents without a name. Thus, you see, young one, we do not kill humans. If you were to kill a human, their family would pursue you relentlessly. Should you harm their family, the entire species would seek vengeance against you, and you would be wise to hope they find you first. If their lawyers were to capture you, you would be fortunate if your own people did not feel compelled to execute you as a form of atonement. I had no knowledge of this, which is painfully evident. I am not typically one to intrude into a customer's affairs, but may I inquire what this human did to provoke you? They insulted my broodmate. They insulted my broodmate. The assassin chuckled. Is that all? Then retaliate with an insult. If it truly upset you, then strike them in the face. But you mentioned that we do not kill humans. Those irrational apes enjoy engaging in verbal combat as much as physical altercations. If you use their fists, your chances of survival will improve. It is likely that you would not be able to inflict physical harm upon them. However, if you took the time to articulate your offense, they might even offer an apology. They are formidable on the battlefield and vengeful when wronged, yet they are not uncivilized. If they were, they would not have been able to reconstruct the council to its current state. They occupy the head chair position and are expected to maintain it for generations to come. They are a resolute yet just race. The assassin drained the last remnants of his drink and gazed mournfully at the empty glass. Now then, my cup is empty. Unless you intend to refill it, I believe we have concluded our discussion. What is the target? It is a hue.